مرحبا بالجميع وشكرا لانضمامكم إلينا اليوم في هذه الندوة
Welcome everyone and thank
الإلكترونية
you for
تحت
joining us
عنوان
today in
سد
this
الفجوة
webinar
ريادة المرأة في تعزيز
on
الشمول
closing the
المالي في
gap,
العالم
women's
العربي.
leadership in advancing financial inclusion in the Arab world.
سنبدأ فورا.
We shall start immediately.
أولا في الأمور اللوجستية لطرح
Let me
الأسئلة
start
أثناء
first with
الندوة
logistics.
يرجى
To
استخدام
raise
خانة
questions during
الدردشة
this
على
webinar,
الجانب
kindly
الأيمن
use
من
the
نافذة
chat
زوم
on
لديكم.
the right side of
وللتأكد
your
من
Zoom
رؤية
window.
سؤالكم يرجى تحديد الجميع أو everyone من
Please
القائمة
send your
المنسدلة.
question to everyone
ويرجى إبقاء
from the
كاميرا الويب
list so that we
مغلقة
can see it.
لضمان
Kindly keep
خصوصيتكم
your camera
وتجنب مشاكل
off
النطاق
to
الترددي.
ensure privacy and
وستظل
limit
ميكروفونات
broadband
الحاضرين
issues.
مكتومة الصوت
The
أثناء جلسة
microphones will also
الويبينار
be
بأكملها.
muted during the
وسيتم
entire
إرسال
webinar.
تسجيل الندوة إلى
The
جميع
recording
الحاضرين
of this webinar will also
والمسجلين
be
عبر
sent
البريد
to
الإلكتروني
all attendees
فور
and those who
انتهاء
have
هذه الندوة.
registered via email.
وننتقل الآن إلى مديرة الحوار
Allow
سحر
me to give the
الطيبي
floor now to the
المستشارة الأولى
moderator,
لبوابة
Sahar
الشمول
Tieby,
المالي
Senior
للتنمية.
Advisor to the
إليك سحر.
FinDev. Thank you, Eddie, and welcome everyone. Allow me to thank the main speakers. We have with us Mrs. Aude Montesquiou from the consultative group to assist the poor, and Mrs. Alwazna Bousbei from the Al-Kuraimi Islamic Microfinance Bank from Yemen. In today's webinar, we will focus on the role of women in financial inclusion. We will cover different dimensions, focusing on leadership, equality, as well as some innovative ideas that have ensured financial inclusion for women in the Arab world. This gap still exists in the Arab world. It accounts between 14 to 20%, according to the recent statistics of FinDev. This is in terms of the gap between women bank owners. We will start today with a presentation by Mrs. Aude, in which she will shed light on the role of FinEquity, part of CGAP. She will also present some of the newly developed tools to support microfinance worldwide for the purpose of ensuring inclusion for women in all levels, in leadership and as agents in financial institutions. In the second part of this webinar, we will listen to Mrs. Alwazna about statistics and experiences for financial inclusion of women, in particular in Yemen, which also would cover some of the challenges and the milestones achieved. In the third part of today, we will raise two questions and we will allow the participants to choose which group they would like to discuss with to answer one of these two questions. The first group will be in English, which will be moderated by Mrs. Aude, and the second group in Arabic will also be moderated by Mrs. Alwazna. Then we will come back to listen to a brief summary from these two groups, and we will be ready to answer any questions that you still have that will not answered during the discussion. Thank you again, and allow me to give the floor now to Mrs. Aude to start the first part of the presentation. Mrs. Aude, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sahar, for the invitation. Shukran jazilan. I'm going to speak English, though I am French, based out of the CGAP office in Paris. I want to thank FinDev Arabic Gateway for the invitation today, and I'm very happy to be here speaking on behalf of FinEquity as FinEquity's global facilitator. So to get us started, next slide, please. What is FinEquity? FinEquity is a community of practice. It's member-led, and it's housed and convened by CGAP. We have over 6,500 members all around the world, which are typically financial service providers, NGOs, donors, academics, researchers, multilaterals, policymakers, everyone who is interested in getting together to understand how we can push for a world where women have the capabilities to access, negotiate, control financial services that can improve their lives. We're really focused on empowering women's economic, fostering women's economic empowerment through financial inclusion. And what we do as a community of practice is help people discuss, create knowledge together, foster best practices, collaborate, and together learn and share around this issue of women's economic empowerment through financial inclusion. Next slide, please. We're organized around 3 learning themes, which were decided by our membership. They were decided for the past 3 years, and we're currently looking at forward-looking our new themes. But for the moment, we're working on 3 things. The first is gender transformative solutions, where we look at things like how do you diagnose and how do you slowly transform social norms that affect women's access to financial services. How do we learn about their preferences and better serve their needs? How do we incentivize financial service providers to better serve women with all their specificities? Our second theme is around what we call impact pathways, but we're looking at things like how do you increase women's resilience through financial inclusion? And then how do you understand and what metrics do you use to understand women's economic empowerment through financial inclusion? So how do you determine that women are indeed improving their lives through financial inclusion? What are the metrics? How do you measure that? How do you measure that change? Our last learning theme is around digitally enabled financial inclusion. And here we look principally at things like digital financial literacy of women. We know that women are less financially literate than men and that they are more challenged in accessing technologies. So we look specifically at digital financial literacy for women, and also what does good consumer protection of women look like? How do you make sure that women are protected in their access to financial services? Next slide, please. So FinEquity membership is global, but we have 2 regional hubs that are really growing right now. The first is Latin America, which we launched 18 months ago and has grown to 1,600 people in just a few months. And this community of practice is in Spanish. And the second is an Africa group. Here, the language is English, though we do want to make an effort to do more in French also to serve West Africa. And the idea with this regional hub is also to get closer to the needs and the interests of the community in Africa more broadly. We'd also be really keen to see if there's interest in exchange and doing more with stakeholders in MENA. So please feel free to reach out, and also in the chat to let us know if this is something of interest. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to speak about some recent work that we've done about engendering financial services and these the series of 3 guides that we've produced specifically for financial service providers, thinking of how can you better serve women and make sure that the products you offer them are helping meet their needs and really help them gain economic empowerment. We're looking at 3 things. The first is how gender diversity in the leadership of financial service providers can help, and how it's important to have female presence within the organization to better serve women. Our second guide is on gender intelligent design. How do you make sure that products and services are designed specifically for women? And our third guide is on using gender disaggregated data and analyzing it in a way that helps your organization. Of these 3 guides, today I'm going to briefly touch upon 2, the first 2. the one on gender diversity and the one on gender intelligent design. Maybe if this is of interest, we might have another conversation online with the FinDev Arabic Gateway about the question of collecting and using gender disaggregated data. Again, this is something, let us know if this is something of interest. So to get us started on the next slide on gender diversity and leadership, basically what we want to convey is that there is proven, documented evidence that diversity is and having more women on the board and within staff of financial institutions is good for the financial service providers. It provides greater financial stability. It improves the portfolio quality. It reduces the risks, but it also allows to meet their goals better, serve more women, serve women better, and help them advance. So really the idea here is to say banks with higher percentages, banks and financial service providers with higher percentages of women within their leadership and within their teams are better at serving women clients. They're also much more innovative in terms of the products they produce. If we go to the next slide, I just want to give you a bit of an overview of what the gender diversity and leadership guide looks like. And I'm just putting the link to the guide in the chat here. Basically, this guide is divided in 3 sections. Why it's important for financial service providers to look into their leadership and their staff and see, how are women represented, are women on the boards, are women in the leadership positions, and what is the composition of their staff? Do they have sufficient female staff within their workforce, and how they can retain women in their workforce? The second is really tools for financial service providers to do gender gap assessments, assess their capacity around retaining and training, retaining, and keeping female staff within their organization. And the last section of the tool is really tools for financial service providers themselves to build their capacity in this area. So that's just an overview. Some of these tools exist in Arabic, some are in English, but I invite you to go into the guide. You will see the link here and see which tools might be useful for your organization. Basically, either more on the conceptual level, why should we be doing this? Or on the kind of concrete assessment level, where are we with our organization? And then once you've done that, how can we improve the diversity within our organization? Next slide, please. Thanks. The next guide, which I want to tell you about, also available on the link I've just put up, is around helping financial service providers design gender intelligent products and services. What we've noted is that, products, typically, if you don't specifically think about how you're going to reach and serve your woman clients, then products tend to be gender blind. There's, we traditionally say, one size fits all, but actually no, one size tends to fit men. And so you need to be really specific if you want products to have an effect on women, you need to design specifically for them. The other thing is that when we have gender neutral products for everyone, then we typically find that we're actually perpetuating biases, assuming that men and women are using the same type of financial services in the same way. And so the idea with gender intelligent products is really how can we use data to better understand and research to better understand and overcome the difficulties of women in accessing and using financial services that can empower them. Thank you. If we can go to the next slide. So here, this is just an overview of this second guide. Basically, it has a similar structure. Why design for women? So we have a group of resources around, policy, and other types of documents to really show, why it makes sense to take a gender intelligent approach, case studies about banks and financial service providers that have designed specifically for women and what it meant for them in business sense. So really the first section is really on why this is important. The second section is how to, and this is, specifically for financial service providers. How do you do a customer segmentation? Why is it useful? How can you be more data driven? How do you unpack the data you have and turn it into insight for your product design? And more resources around specifically designing products and delivering these designed for women. And the last section is really tools with guidance on the product design, including for digital financial service providers. Just a last slide, which we will actually come back to. Here, the question really is for us on this webinar today to discuss, what are some of the big challenges in terms of getting female staff within financial service providers. How do you retain female staff? How do you make sure that you are able to manage your talents and make sure that there are women within your institution? The second question, and this will be discussed in English with me, and then we'll have another small group discussion with Sahar and our other speaker from Yemen. We'll be discussing around how do you create and set business and performance targets that can really help promote diversity within financial service providers. And that will be the second group in Arabic, and you will be able to choose between English or Arabic in the two groups. But this is for after. Right now, I think Sahar is going to guide us back into the conversation and present our other speaker from Yemen. Thank you, Sahar.
Thank you very much, Aude. Thank you for all the information you have provided about the most recent guidance and tools provided by FinEquity, which you have been working on with the members in the different regions. And hopefully we will have bigger participation from the Arab countries in the future. Allow me now to give the floor to Mrs. Alwazna from the Al-Kuraimi Islamic Microfinance Bank from Yemen. She will be sharing some statistics and their experience based on the work of the Al-Kuraimi Bank in Yemen. She will also be sharing her personal experience after multiple years in leadership positions in Al-Kuraimi Bank. Mrs. Alwazna, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mrs. Sahar. First and foremost, on behalf of Al-Kuraimi Bank, allow me to express my thanks to the organizers to thank FinDev. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to be with you today. And I hope that my presentation will have an added value to this webinar. If I may start with my slides, please. You can see some data in these slides. These data were included in the 2021 World Bank report and in a report issued by IFC. It includes a set of indicators related to the economic situation of women and the leadership positions of women. If you look at this slide, you see that more than 1 billion women around the world do not have a bank account. 73% of women express their dissatisfaction with their banking services. They are not satisfied with the available banking services, or they haven't accessed banking services. So 73% of women are not satisfied. 30% of small and medium enterprises are owned by women. $1.5 trillion is the gap in the small and medium enterprises, and the women-owned small and medium enterprises in emerging markets. But this market is not catered to by financial institutions. 68% of small and medium enterprises, of women-owned enterprises in emerging countries, have unmet credit needs. All this data reveals that this gender gap still exists despite the advances known around the world in terms of financial inclusion. Next slide, please. And the second slide, the data is more relevant to the situation of women in Yemen, but it is also very similar to the previous global context. We still have the same gender gap. According to the World Bank report, women approximately account to 50% of the population of Yemen, but unfortunately only 5% of the women of Yemen are part of the workforce. On the other hand, 75% of men are part of the workforce. 35% of women only can read and write in Yemen. This is the literacy rate, whereas 93% of men can read and write. The literacy rate accounts to 93% amongst men. In terms of financial and economic components, bank account ownership is still low compared to other countries, between Yemen and other countries, but the gap still exists. For instance, only 9% of women already have bank accounts, whereas 11% of men have bank accounts. There is also another study conducted by CGAP, which has proved that 13% of users of electronic financial services are women. If we read these indicators, this is significant, and this proves the existence of a gender gap. And that is why today we can call for better inclusion for women and more empowerment for women, as well as ensuring gender-sensitive approaches in all of our work. Next slide, please. At the local level, the opportunities available for women are very limited. There are many challenges faced by women from an economic and financial perspective. It has been identified that the cultural habits, social and family barriers are main challenges faced by women. In this discussion, we will only focus on the challenges in terms of the gap, but not the general challenges faced by women. We have social, family barriers and personal barriers, as I said before. But most importantly, cultural habits and the weak social awareness of the importance of women at the economic level is an important challenge. I also want to focus on social and family barriers that prevent women from engaging in many activities, believing that these activities only belong to men. And in my opinion, the negative outlook towards women considers that the only role of women is to take care of children and home. It is felt that women cannot reconcile between work and family charges. This is where we need to focus on self-esteem and when we focus on resistance from the side of women themselves. Next slide, please. Based on the yearly census of IFC, which covered 133 banks and financial institutions, it has been revealed that women are a loyal client. They seek to create long-term relations if they are satisfied with their services. We know that satisfied clients are loyal clients. They are loyal to this institution and the retention rate would be high. And this is to say that women are considered as committed and loyal, and it is easy to build with them long-term and sustainable relations if they are satisfied with the services. This may be used for promotion amongst women. When women build a strong relationship with any financial institution, they usually buy more than one product, and that means that women will be using more financial products and more banking products. This is also to say that when women are satisfied, they will give a priority to their relationship with an institution instead of focusing on rates or on prices, especially if the financial institution or if the bank are providing non-financial services or development services for businesses if women are business owners. Women know how to save. They are good at saving. They have a great influence on the way the family spends. All of these indicators reveal that women are more loyal and they are more committed to paying their dues. In the past 4 years, we have seen that women have paid their dues, and even during 2020, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the loyalty and the commitment to paying dues from the side of women was still stable. In Yemen, the women-owned businesses have grown by 67% in the past years, especially when salaries were no longer paid because of the war. And that is why women sought a different alternative to income. That is why women have created their own projects, and we have seen more projects and businesses owned by women. In other terms, if a bank or a financial institution gains the trust of a woman, it is most likely that all of the family members will be using the same service provider. Women are a great opportunity for financial institutions and banks. Women control a great scope of wealth, and they also impact directly or indirectly in more than 80% of the purchase and consumption decisions of their families. And that is why women are the preferred client for smart banks and financial institutions. It is very important to clarify why do we want to focus on empowering women economically. Of course, social and economic empowerment is essential for sustainability. This is one of the most effective ways to rise up to the challenge and to ensure social justice and gender equality. And this is essential to eliminate all forms of discrimination as well. Empowering women can also limit poverty. Why? Because women's participation is an investment in future generations. In fact, women, whenever they control the family resources, they spend more on the education of their children. This can also include an increased level of well-being. This ensures welfare for society and an improvement in the living conditions of women. It can also lead to job creation. Women are an added value for the economy. Economic growth is also an important element. According to the studies of the World Bank, there has been multiple indicators that the participation of women in the economy can increase the GDP. It can increase the GDP between 2 to 3.5% in certain cases. Moreover, women can also ensure a lot of advantages to the economy by creating new businesses, by ensuring economic growth. And finally, we may all agree that the empowerment of women, economic empowerment of women, can also increase financial inclusion.
So based on everything that's been said before, there are a lot of efforts being made by the IFC to ensure that women access financial services, especially microfinance. They target women primarily, but as I have said before, the type of challenges in the Yemeni society requires a change in the mindset. As Kuraimi Bank, in the banking sector, it is the first bank to work on a gender integrated project in cooperation with the IFC. We need women and men included in financial services, whether as providers or beneficiaries. This is why we spare no effort to ensure that there is a fair working environment for our female staff and to ensure equal opportunity and equal promotions. We provide special quarters with facilities for female staff. We reduce shifts during pregnancies and while breastfeeding. We provide health care. We have life insurance. And we have social insurance. We have leave in case of death up to 70 days. And this all seeks to provide a safe working environment as much as possible. As a bank, we have a trained female cadre, and they are qualified to provide services with the highest of quality for all customers and clients. We want to be helpful and to ensure women's access to financial services. As a bank, we are in all urban and rural areas. We have 210 branches, 34,000 members of staff, 310 ATMs, and of course, we have applications online and offline. Any woman, regardless of the environment where she is living or working, they can access services. There's a lot of diverse products and services that would satisfy their needs based on market research and needs assessment, especially in terms of savings and funding that would add value to their projects and enterprises with facilitated processes. We also provide non-financial services. The more we provide comprehensive responses to their needs, the better we can provide help. Through partnerships with women's organizations, with institutions working in this regard. The latest project was Brave Women. We have provided financial grants for over 600 women-owned enterprises across Yemen. We had awareness raising campaigns for banking and financial activities, and this helped women be more engaged in their finances. Of course, we need to provide communication channels that are suitable for all segments. We have call centers, branches, our own staff, ATMs, Facebook, WhatsApp. So we've gone beyond working on just reception and branches. No, we were proactive. We're working door to door. So our women staff look for customers and want to provide that services wherever they find them. Next slide, please. Of course, these efforts have yielded great outcomes. 15% of senior management are women. This is a great encouragement for women, for workers as well, in order to encourage their and promote their confidence and their trust in their own potential and capabilities. In terms of number of customers, female customers, if we go back to 2016, there was only 10,000 women customer, but now we've grown to over 350,000. 16% of bank accounts are owned by women. So we're talking about 30 million accounts. It's 3 million accounts. 35% of deposits are owned by women, and this is a great indicator that shows women's trust in the bank and in its strategy and in the strategy success. We were able to disperse 6,200 funding paths for women-owned enterprises. So we were at 4% for women's portfolio in Al-Kuraimi Bank, but now we've reached 17%. For women portfolio, we have 20 billion in our portfolio, but still we need to close this gap. We know that we can, through the awareness and the conviction of the senior management and women's inclusion. Thank you for hearing me, and I hope that I did not go over my allotted time. Thank you, Alwazna. Thank you for all of this information that you've given us. Of course, this brings us hope. And we hope that there is a lot of developments and achievements and milestones made by Al-Kuraimi Bank to support women's inclusion in enterprises or financial services, either as management or as beneficiaries in Yemen. Thank you. And now we will have a group work so that participants have the opportunity to discuss these themes and benefit from our speakers' presence. The first question is the biggest challenges in terms of staff retention and turnover. The first breakout will be monitored or facilitated by Mrs. Aude and Eddie. And the second question, how can you set business and performance targets that promote diversity
مع السيدة وزنة وباللغة العربية
at FSPs
نرجع بعد 10 دقائق عشان نعطي ملخص من الطرفين من المجموعتين
breakout rooms and we can answer the questions with the discussion of from our participants.
Okay, well then we need to talk to the team at FinEquity and very well represented by Aude here with us. to see what we can do to bring and what are the priorities to bring the body of work. ليش أنا بحكي بالإنجليزي بعذر. بدنا نشوف كيف نقدر نجيب الشغل اللي عملتوه وممكن نحاول.
We will try to get the work that you've done and to prepare it in Arabic, because this is our language and this is the language that would work, that we would use for work. For our group, we had
بعض الصعوبات
some interventions. There was some challenges for the communication over internet, and this is one of the difficulties that we face in work in our countries. But in conclusion, and briefly, how can we enhance diversity through the customer base or the staff in microfinance institutions? We had ideas about awareness raising, the lack of confidence or trust
تقدر تقوم بهذا الدور. بعض الأفكار كانت إنه لازم نبرز
the women themselves
من العميلات أو من الموظفات. كيف نقدر نشتغل على
how we can work in the working environment that would enable safety and equality for a better role by women. Regarding turnover, in light of the changes, social changes, so how we can encourage institutions to be patient, to provide the good and safe environment for women to work. Of course, a lot of consideration should be given to the female customers and female staff, involve and engage women in decision making, ensure equal opportunity, equal pay, equal promotions. Mrs. Alwazna spoke about microfinance institutions having clear targets for percentages of the role or participation of women in senior management or for the staff. Lastly, of course, we have market research that could provide more accurate information and how we can utilize this information to help women, whether customers or staff. And this is the guide that Aude spoke about data and information and how we can analyze this information to inform economic support for women and economic empowerment of women through microfinancing and financial services. Do you have any questions beforehand? No more questions. So we reiterate the benefit of the three guides, which you could consider, and we would like to ask you if there is some interest about these kind of themes, leaderships, diversity, and so on, so that we can prepare for future steps and next steps in order to provide this kind of content for our participants through the FinDev Gateway. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Aude and Alwazna. Thank you, CGAP and Al-Kuraimi Bank. And then I go back to Eddie so that he could take us through the next steps.
شكرا سحر. أود أن أشكر الجميع من
Thank
جديد
you, Sahar. I would like
وخصوصا
to thank
المتكلمين معنا اليوم
everyone, especially our dear
والمترجمين
speakers
الفوريين أيضا من the
and
language
our
platform على
interpreters as
تعاونهم
well from
معنا.
the language platform
وماذا
for
بعد
their
ذلك وبعد هذه
help and
الندوة
assistance.
يرجى تخصيص
What next?
دقيقة لإعلامنا
Please
برأيكم في
dedicate
البرنامج
1
على
minute to
الويب
share with
اليوم
us your
من خلال
views
إكمال
on
الاستبيان
this
الذي سيكون متاح على الشاشة
webinar
فور
by
انتهاء هذه الندوة.
filling out
وثانيا سنرسل إليكم
the
بريدا
questionnaire.
إلكترونيا عندما
Then
يصبح
we will be
تسجيل هذه
sending you
الندوة
an
وكل
email
المواد تصير
once the
متاحة على
webinar
موقع
recording and
البوابة.
all material
ثالثا وأخيرا
will be available
لمزيد
on
من
the
الموارد
FinDev
عن الشمول
Gateway.
المالي
And then
يرجى
for
زيارة
any
موقع
more resources about financial
findevgateway.org/ar
inclusion, please
FinEquity.org
check
وCGAP.org.
our
شكرا لكم.
links and websites. Thank you.
شكرا الوزنة وأود وسحر.
Thank you, Alwazna,
وللجميع.
Aude, and Sahar. And
Thank you for the invite. Goodbye, Eddie. Goodbye, Sahar. Goodbye, Danielle. Goodbye,
إلى اللقاء.
Alwazna.
مع السلامة موفقين. Goodbye, Aude.
Goodbye.